As a girly pop gamer, I think it's time we address the elephant in the room, the elusive female gaze, and what does it mean for the future of video games? I've talked about in some past videos about like girly pop gaming and the renaissance and just like what that means for like games that are targeted. I want to call it specifically the female gaze in mind. I feel like when it comes to video games that there is like usually the one type of audience that is catered to, and since video games kind of started out a little bit more gendered than it should be, where mostly it's targeted to boys and men, I feel like we do have had times when games are marketed towards the girly gamers. Like I feel like there is a rise on gamers that are women, and I think that it's so interesting recently. I feel like there's a lot of games that kind of encapsulates the female gaze, which I will explain. But I just kind of wanted to talk a bit about that, talk about like what does the female gaze mean in video games, and just like get deeper into that topic because I'm just really interested in the rise that we've been seeing of like really popular games that are more so targeted towards the female demographic. But before I get started, my name is Delaney. I love talking about video games. I've been over here chilling in this corner of the internet. If you want to just yap and talk about games with me, I love to hear you guys comment below. Like and subscribe, all of that. Also, thank you so much to the channel members that are supporting the channel as well. You guys are all awesome. And without further ado, we're gonna get started. I cannot talk about the female gaze without like explaining like what does that mean? What is the female gaze? I will say it is a very broad term, to be honest, but I want to say like the female like film gaze is, it can be elusive and it doesn't necessarily have to be something that is created by a woman. When I think about the female gaze, I feel like it's like a feeling, you know, it's like a moment and just like emotion, like those kind of things is what I think about when it comes to a female gaze. Because like when we talk about the topic of a male gaze, especially when it comes to video games, it's like an emphasis on like masculinity, very much emphasis of like guns, shooting. These are just very general ideas of like what the male gaze would be. But I feel like with the female gaze, it's kind of like you're looking at this subject, but you're also feeling like what they're feeling emotionally. The best way I can try to break down the female gaze and what it represents would be from the director Joey Soloway. She talks about the female gaze in movies and media. So it is broken down in 3 points. So the first point would be feeling seen, which would be like a camera subjective. So understanding the character's emotions and thought. You're looking at this character and you are feeling exactly how they feel in that moment, and you're getting this like in-depth view of this character is not just as an object. Next would be the gazed gaze, which is repetitive, but the next point would be the gazed gaze, sense of connection with the audience. So the audience is connecting to this character. We are the audience that is viewing this subject and connecting to them. The third point would be returning the gaze, which would be switching roles and dividing the aspects of desire in the gaze. And I also want to add seeing beyond the lens of the patriarchy. And I will say when it comes to like this third point that it would just exactly be like seeing beyond the patriarchy of like how a woman is viewed, but I also feel like in another way how a man is viewed as well outside of the lens of the patriarchy, you know, and expands on it. These 3 points is the best way to explain and break down what the female gaze is. I feel like that it's really kind of broad and it is actually so elusive in a way, because like for me, when I think of the female gaze, I think specifically of Pride and Prejudice and Mr. Darcy's hand flicks. You know, these are things that everyone unanimously, like I have seen all over Reddit and forums, everyone unanimously sees that that's the female gaze. It's not something inherently like sexual. It's something that is more like attention, like a desire, a yearning, like those kind of things. Like I feel like that encapsulates how the female gaze works. It's more about the emotion behind the thing as opposed to the look of the thing. You get what I mean? Hopefully. But yes, that is what I mean by that. So I think some of these games that have come out recently, also I kind of want to talk about a little bit about some past games as well and how they encapsulate the female gaze. So I'm going to start from the beginning, not exactly the beginning, but like the 2000s. So like where my lore started, now where girls gaming has had the most like emphasis was during like the early 2000s, where there were like very hyper film games targeted to the female demographic demographic. I want to say like a lot of people like to call some of these games like shovelware. Like there's like a lot of negativity when it comes to games that are marketed towards women, and that's a whole nother topic on its own. But anyway, first game, I want to say I've been recently actually been playing Barbie Horse Adventure. I absolutely adore, like I feel like every Barbie game encapsulates the female gaze. Barbie movies as well. I absolutely adore Barbie Horse Adventure because it has this like very whimsical to it. It's very nostalgic, but it also, there's just something about being Barbie and running around the countryside on a horse, and that's your task, that's what you do. That is just so wholesome. Like it's just such a vibe, because I feel like when it comes to Barbie Horse Adventure, it's not really in wholly focused on Barbie, but it's also focused on the landscape. Like you're running around these different areas, and it's just like the butterflies in the distance, the sunlight and how it flashes on the screen, the nature noises, like all of these things I feel like has in some way encapsulates the female gaze. Just like being in that moment and feeling in nature, but like yeah, it just like captures this like feeling of girlhood, of like being unencumbered by the constraints of, I want to say, the patriarchy. Barbie's one objective is finding new horses, and you're going to this horse ranch with your friends. But I feel like I would be remiss not to talk about the icon of PC girly pop gaming, and I feel like a very good example of the female gaze, the Nancy Drew games. Nancy Drew in every game that she's ever been in, it is something so iconic about them. What I really find so interesting about the Nancy Drew games is that you actually don't see Nancy. You're working in a first person point of view. Nancy is the subject but not the subject at the same time. You're putting yourself in Nancy's shoes, so you get to actually explore and find these different puzzles through her viewpoint. Like she's like a vessel in a way for the female gaze. She notices things that you wouldn't normally notice in every day. Like she's looking for puzzles, and like you're very inquisitive. Nancy's very curious as a character, and I think that is something that embodies the female gaze. Just as you subjectively playing as Nancy Drew, you're discovering things through her eyes, and you're discovering like little details that you wouldn't normally notice. And that's what I think is really interesting about the Nancy Drew games when you think about it from the viewpoint of the female gaze, because you're literally stepping into the shoes of Nancy Drew and getting to see the world through her eyes. And even though you don't see Nancy, she still is a character within herself. She's not seen as an object, and she also has her own agency. And that's what I think is so interesting about the force that is the Nancy Drew games, how powerful she is without actually being pictured or being seen on the screen. And that is actually so interesting to me when it comes to like the female gaze as well. I'm gonna get more into like the more recent games that have released. We're really in a resurgence of like girly pop gaming, but also just in the popularity, because like they're not just essentially enjoyed by one type of demographic, they're enjoyed by all kind of demographics. And I think that they're like very gender neutral when it comes to like their audience, is what I mean. Because I always feel like there's like a very negative connotation when it comes to games that are marketed towards women. First game I want to talk about is Fields of Mistria. Fields of Mistria actually is not fully released, it's in early access, and it's a farming sim. I feel like Fields of Mistria has this like very good embodiment of the female gaze, and I say this because there is just something about the art style, there's something about the like whimsy of it that I feel like is just so interesting compared to other farming sims that I played. They kind of encapsulate a little bit of that like magical girl aesthetic when it comes to these characters. The other thing I really enjoy about Fields of Mistria is that all of the characters that you encounter, you don't feel like they are existing just as entertainment for you as the main character. Everyone feels like they have their own lives, they have their own set of motivations and their personality. The way that Fields of Mistria is presented to us, it just feels a little bit more emotional. I feel like I'm more invested in the storyline of the characters than any of the other farming sim I've actually played. The dialogue just feels so effortless. There's a dragon, a stone dragon that I somehow am in love with. He's literally a dragon statue. I feel like that encapsulates what the female gaze is, because it's more about the feeling than the look. The next game is Infinity Nikki, and I've talked about Infinity Nikki and how it embraces girlhood. the birds outside my window get me cracking up. It is like very hyper film, which I really enjoy about Infinity Nikki. But when it comes to Infinity Nikki, it has this like way of making Nikki the subject, but she's not the object, you know? So as you are guided through the world of Infinity Nikki through Nikki's eyes, I think what is really special about it is how it embraces like a lot of like hyperfem qualities, but especially when it comes to like games that are marketed to girls and women. One of the core things that's a part of a lot of girly pop games is dressing up, decorating, gathering, foraging, crafting, those kinds of things. And what I think is so interesting about Infinity Nikki is how these things are your power inherently as you are playing the game. Wearing the right outfit is your power. This is how you're able to navigate in the game. You have your gliding outfit, you have your fishing outfit. These things are what inherently gives you your power to interact with the world of Nikki. And that's what I find so interesting about it, especially through the lens of the female gaze. I do know a majority of the dev team of Infinity Nikki are women, which I think also adds to just like inherent like wholesomeness of it. Some qualities that I really enjoy about it is that Nikki is never sexualized as a character. So there's times like where you jump on a bike and if you have a skirt that's kind of short, they make sure they change the outfit. Even the outfits that are like really fancy, like say the gliding outfit, she has on little bloomers underneath. Like there are like little steps taken to make sure that Nikki as a character is not objectified. But what I really do love about Nikki also as a character is just the way she interacts with her world. Nikki is very curious and she's always trying to help. She has a way to connect with the people that she's helping while she's in Maryland. She has this level of empathy for characters even when they've done wrong, even when they are inherently doing something bad. And it's actually quite healing that like her like being able to have like that like intuition, that emotion, it really adds like another dimension to the story. A lot of times having emotions and feeling and crying, all of these things are also seen as a negative. And in Nikki, like dressing up and like talking to people and trying to have a connection with others, it's always praised and really giving like such a positive light, which is what I really enjoy about Infinity Nikki. In last game, and this actually is what made me think more about the female gaze in video games and just like how it is really like on the rise right now, and only also because of the discourse that was surrounding it, which I've talked about in some past videos. But love in Deepspace, and I feel like honestly I feel like Otome games encapsulates the female gaze the most of any kind of gaming genre, because it is essentially marketed towards women and it's about romance and intimacy and things like that. But I want to specifically pull Love in Deepspace into the ring because I think that it is doing something so different from what I've seen with other Otome games that is just, it makes you connect more to the characters. But what I think it's really funny is that recently it has gone through the discourse of being called a Gooner game, which is very laughable to me considering when you're playing the game there's so much like emotional intimacy, romance, how these characters are humanized. What I really find interesting about Love in Deepspace is that it kind of goes back to the third point of what embodies the female gaze, which is returning the gaze. It's trying to take itself out of the confines of the patriarchy, which would be like the third point, which is like switching the roles. And what I said earlier was that it doesn't just, I feel like it generally wouldn't just be about like a woman being seen as an object, but also a man being seen as an object as well. And I think that Love in Deepspace actually does really well with like taking both of those topics, like both sides, and making them more humanized. So you get to play as the main character, you get to customize your character, you get to also see first person point of view of the female protagonist, which I would say is like similar to the Nancy Drew games, how you're viewing it through your MC's eyes, which I'm gonna call main character MC. You're viewing it through your MC's eyes and you're seeing these like different romantic scenarios or moments through their eyes. But what I really love about Love in Deepspace is how it humanizes the male characters in the game. The big emphasis on Love in Deepspace is the 5 male protagonists. You get to go on dates with them, you can interact with them in different kinds of ways. But what I love the most about Love in Deepspace is how much it humanizes these characters, because it doesn't just make them objects, it gives them personalities, it gives them like motivations beyond just the MC. They all have like their likes and dislikes, they have like hobbies, they have like their jobs that they are really passionate about. And that's what I really enjoy about Love in Deepspace, is how much it really does encapsulate what I think the most, I would would say the most modern take of the female gaze is, because even when you have the romantic intimate moments, it's not focused on the steamy bits, it's more focused on the moment. So like there would be an emphasis on like how the person is looking at you, or like a hand touch. And it's actually, I think, one of the best examples of the female gaze in video games right now. Is able to capture these moments without objectifying the subject. Even the battles are done in a way of a female gaze, which is something very different from anything I've encountered. Like, you know, you think about like when it comes to like the battle mode, other video games, it's more so like focused on the violence. But when it comes to Love and Deepspace, like you are working in tandem with the whatever companion you're choosing, and the way they interact during the battles, I think, is another point of the female gaze, because it's not emphasized about like how good they look while they're doing it. It's more so like the moments when they're motivating the MC to keep going in the battle, or sometimes even when they're being very protective of the MC and shielding them from harm. Just so interesting that they're able to still have like intimate moments even during the battle moment, that I think really captures the female gaze in a way. And there's just so many things about Love and Deepspace that I love, especially when it comes to the female gaze in video games. But anyway, those are my thoughts about the female gaze and some games that I feel like are good examples of it. You guys let me know down below, what do you think the female gaze is? What are video games you feel like captures that as well? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic, because it's just very interesting to me, especially in the landscape of the gaming atmosphere. And I just feel like girl gaming in general is on the rise, and I just really love how popular it is becoming again. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one, and have a wonderful day as always. Bye.